Good afternoon. This is David Unsworth, host of the PanAm Post English podcast. London has emerged as the latest battleground between ride-sharing app Uber and the taxicab industry. The city's transportation regulator, Transport for London, recently announced that Uber would not have its license renewed in the city, infuriating London's estimated 3.5 million users and calling into question the city's attempts to limit consumer choice and competition. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has recently weighed in on the subject, saying that Uber needs to play by the rules, but many view the alleged safety violations with which Uber has been charged as a smokescreen as the city bows to the powerful taxi industry, which charges significantly more for its services than Uber drivers. What role should governments play in the regulation of transportation? And ultimately, what will be the fate of Uber's 40,000 drivers and millions of users in the British capital? Well, the Washington Post yesterday sent a reporter to ride around London in the traditional black cabs and with Uber drivers and to report on the comparison. Transport for London has charged the Silicon Valley outfit with not running a quote-unquote fit and proper organization. And they have specifically cited lack of background checks and medical checks on its drivers. Uber says that they have provided necessary documentation to Transport for London. But this is a political firestorm, and it breaks down, as we're going to see later in the podcast, it breaks down along very interesting cultural, socioeconomic, and political lines. It is hard for me to... The Washington Post has a video here where they make the comparison. And they talk to one John McDowell, who is extremely belligerent and angry regarding the existence of Uber in London. And it turns out his arguments are ludicrously off base. I mean, they just... He is so unself-aware that he can't even see how preposterous his arguments make him appear to be. To drive a black cab in London, you need to study the quote-unquote knowledge, which requires you to memorize the 25,000 streets in London. He claims in this video he had to study 10 hours a day for 2.5 years. Now, just doing a rough estimate here, at 10 hours a day for roughly, let's say, 900 days, 9,000 hours of study to be able to drive a taxi cab? I mean, are you kidding me? When the technology platform that Uber provides, Waze, enables anyone with a driver's license to drive around London without any problems? I mean, it is beyond preposterous. I mean, McDonald, his other arguments involve, we've been here for 350 years and this American company comes in and decides to take over. That's not on. Well, we have a free market economy, or at least we would like to have a free market economy in the world and in Great Britain and London. He has nothing but scorn for London consumers who claim that black taxi cab services are frightfully expensive. And the last time I took a black cab in London, it was for a 20-minute ride. It was something like £13, which at the time was almost $20. I mean, it's preposterously expensive. When he's queried by the Washington Post reporter about the cost, he says, the people who think a black cab is too expensive are the people who spend £150 on a meal, drink loads of beer at £5 a pint, and then they want to go home for nothing. How many people can spend £150 on a meal even in London? I mean, so the only people who don't want to use black cabs are basically reckless, hedonistic alcoholics who want to go out and spend enormous amounts of money on food and drink, and then they don't want to pay anything to go home. No, they want choice and competition. They want a free market that provides various options, and they can choose the option that they like. If a black cab service is better, consumers will go with that. If Uber service is better, consumers will go with that. Hearing from these black cab drivers in London, the first thing that occurred to me were two words that you often hear the left throw around: entitlement and privilege. They feel that they have an entitlement to tell the citizens of London what options they can take for transportation, and they feel like they have the privilege to do so as well. That they are a protected class, they are a privileged class, and they are very unhappy that immigrants can come in and do the same thing that they can do, and at a lower cost. Now, London's mayor, Sadiq Khan, who is himself the son of Pakistani immigrants, he has pronounced on the matter and said that Transport for London is correct, Uber isn't playing by the rules, and he's been supportive of shutting down Uber. He's been mayor of London since 2016. Now, there's just one problem. There is a video of him in 2015, just a year before he became mayor of London, admitting that he likes to take both black cabs and Ubers. Oops! So he wants to ban a service that he himself admitted that he enjoys using. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine. The only people in London today who would take a black cab over an Uber are people who don't have smartphones and don't know what Uber is and don't know what level of service it provides. I've taken Ubers all over the world, and I've taken taxi cabs all over the world. I have had myriad problems with taxi drivers, the level of service, just fraud, basically straight up fraud. With Uber, it is seamless. It is effective. It is efficient. It's a dream. You punch in where you are and where you want to go in an application. Uber tells you how much it costs, and that's it. You don't have to worry about some taxi driver trying to rip you off. Now, Sadiq Khan is trying to backtrack here. There's been a public outcrying. 800,000 people now have signed a change.org petition trying to get Transport for London to change their minds. That is the most popular petition of the year, with 800,000 signers. So Khan has said, I know that Uber has become a popular service for many Londoners, but it would be wrong for TfL to license Uber if there was any way this could pose a threat to Londoners' safety or security. I'm sorry, they're great. You can have background checks. It's not going to make any difference. I guarantee you that you are at far greater risk taking a taxi cab in any major city in the world than you are taking an Uber. And Uber has said it has provided all necessary paperwork on its drivers to Transport for London. You know, and again, there are 40,000 licensed drivers, Uber drivers in London. They're entrepreneurs, they're small business people, and 3.5 million Londoners use the service. And I guarantee you, as a taxi driver himself said in this Washington Post article, nothing is going to stop Uber. And if they do stop Uber, half a dozen other service providers are going to come along. There is nothing that is going to stop this. Fundamentally, the market should determine the price of a good or service. New technology is always going to be disruptive. And every industry needs to take appropriate measures to prepare for that. I mean, there is absolutely no excuse for the London taxi industry. I mean, sorry, if immigrants can come in and do your job, well, too bad. That's life. That's how the world works. There certainly is no need to study for 2.5 years to drive a car, which is something that any 16 or 17 or 18-year-old kid can do, and look at a screen and see where you go straight, where you turn left, where you turn right. It's preposterous. And continuing with the theme of hypocrisy here on the left, which is one of my favorite themes to discuss here at the PanAm Post, The left claims to champion immigrants, speakers of English as a second language, the working class people, and the poor. But do they really? And in this case, do they really? Who are the people that drive for Uber? Well, they're immigrants. They're working class people. They're certainly not wealthy Britons who just want to earn a little extra money. No, they're not driving around in Ubers. This is a way up for people who have had fewer economic opportunities and now can provide a valuable service and compete in a free market economy. And if they have to take on the taxi industry, well, fine, they have every right to do so. That is the entire foundation of economic theory. That is the entire foundation of the greatness of free market economies. Choice and competition. But it's not just that. It's not just the fact that the drivers are largely immigrants from places such as India or Pakistan or Jamaica or Morocco or Iran or whatever it may be. It's the fact that it is so expensive to take a black cab in London that it would have to be deemed a luxury. It's extremely expensive. I couldn't do it. Most Londoners couldn't do it, even in a place with very high wages like London. It's extremely expensive. Working class people need a safe, efficient, and reliable way to get home at night. And if Uber is providing the same service for 30 or 40 or 50% or even more less than a black cab service, well, of course, people are going to take that. So either lower your prices if you're driving a black cab or get into a new industry. I mean, come on. The Washington Post deals with this kind of interesting divide because it is the political left that is opposing Uber, but the Uber drivers themselves are people who you'd most likely associate with the political left. As the article notes, in multicultural London, Uber drivers are far more likely to be named Ali or Muhammad, while black cab drivers tend to be an Ollie or a Brian. And the fight is playing out in a city where much of the white working class finds itself challenged by the forces of globalism, mass immigration, and galloping technological change. All hot-button topics since Britain voted to leave the European Union. Well, fair enough. I'm a libertarian, but I'm also a believer in the rule of law, and I do believe in enforcing immigration laws, and we can't just have anyone pouring into wealthy Western democracies because they feel like it. There's got to be enforcement of the law. However, it is beyond preposterous for this privileged, entitled taxi driver class in London and Great Britain to think that they are just entitled to having a monopoly on driving people around in cars. This is not highly skilled labor. I mean, anyone can do this. Anyone who can qualify for a driver's license can drive around the city, particularly now with new technology like Waze. It makes absolutely no sense for black cab drivers to be spending 10,000 hours of their life or something, as John McDowell is saying, to memorize all of London's 25,000 streets when anyone who can attach a smartphone to their windshield can do this instantly without ever having been to London before. I mean, you cannot be serious. I mean, the same way that Airbnb has revolutionized the tourism industry, and hotel executives can say, well, they don't have the same safety features. Anyone who's traveling to another country and staying in an Airbnb has lived in a house. What kind of safety features are you worried about? I mean, that is part of being a consumer. Caveat emptor. You have to take responsibility for your own choices. If you arrive at an Airbnb property and you feel it's unsafe, well, fair enough. You can cancel it. If you have a driver who picks you up in an Uber and you feel it's unsafe, well, you don't have to take that Uber. You can file a complaint with Uber. This it's funny because you so often hear, especially post-Trump, you hear about how, well, the Trump coalition, they just don't like change, and a lot of them are racists, and they don't like immigrants, and they don't like people who don't have white skin. Well, that plays out a lot too with Great Britain in regard to Brexit. But here you kind of have things inverted on your head. The political left is actually opposing the interests of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, both Uber drivers and Uber customers, who merely want to get around the city. It's something that everyone has to do. Everyone needs transportation. And while London has a relatively well-developed public transportation system, it's also rather expensive, and it may not be all that practical. It's great if you live close to a tube stop and you're going somewhere that's also close to a tube stop. But you may be much better off taking Uber. And the other thing is, too, the Uber app is great. It's just great. It's a pleasure to use. I mean, you can have, in 15 seconds, you can have an Uber driver ordered, and you can see where he is, what his license plate is. You can see his rating. Uber has thought of everything. They've thought of a rating system to make sure that your driver is providing the high level of customer service that Uber has been known for. So Sadiq Khan is a hypocrite. He's a Marxist. He's basically Jeremy Corbyn, who won't put his foot in his mouth as much as Jeremy Corbyn was. Jeremy Corbyn is very happy to let the world know that he's a socialist, he's a communist. Sadiq Khan isn't foolish enough to do that, but those are the birds of a feather with which he flocks. Now, Sadiq Khan has already revealed himself to be an enormous hypocrite. We have him on video saying that he enjoys using Uber. But I challenge any politician of any political stripe. Go anywhere in the world, take 5 taxis, take 5 Ubers, and tell me at the end of the day that you would have preferred to take a taxi service for convenience, for safety, for quality, and for price. It is really time to put an end to these government-sanctioned monopolies. It is time for real consumer choice and competition, and that applies to everything. Healthcare, education, retirement planning, transportation. These same libertarian principles apply to everything. So, really, as they say in Britain, this is just bollocks. The case against Uber is utter and complete bollocks. It is high time to give the consumers of London what they want, and that is Uber. This has been David Unsworth with the English Language Podcast of the PanAm Post, and thank you for listening.